Well, I think the current market conditions are quite unique, looking at the current economic state of the country. And I mean, typically, marketing is often the place where guys cut budgets first when they look at their annual budget and fiscals and so forth that they work out. So it's put a bit of pressure on your marketing heads to really think about creative ways of ensuring that they're getting the best exposure and possibly call to action to the buck they spend. So there's definitely added pressure onto the marketing people in this day and age, and maybe not a bad thing. I think it's always good for marketeers to really think closely about how they spend their money. And of course the golden question is always, but which part of my marketing spend is really working for me and which part not? So I suppose guys are focusing a lot more on ways to measure what they're doing just in comparison to just spending money and hoping for the best. I think the one thing about radio which is really nice, I think in the last few years we've noticed that radio stations themselves understand their audience a lot better. And you can clearly define between the different radio stations. You can clearly see who's speaking to who, and I think that helps the marketeers a hell of a lot, because obviously each marketeer has got a very specific target audience that they want to speak to. So that's the one facet that I think makes radio really nice. The other thing about radio is that you could do it in a way that it's not just an above-the-line type of ad, that the listener wouldn't necessarily think, hey, but this is an advert. You could do it in a way that the listener actually thinks, this is just prompt, this is just happening while it's sort of in conversation. And I think that's another unique thing about radio that you don't necessarily have in print media. So that's a second thing. And I think the third thing is that you can use radio quite effectively with call to action, and I think that's probably the buzzword in marketing right at the moment, is call to action. We need to make sure that we generate business and sales through our effort. So instead of just doing brand awareness, where's the call to action? And I think if you look at a good example, OUTsurance, for instance, you rarely see any of their ads without a call to action at the end. We recently did a campaign with Jacaranda 94.2, knowing that that is the target audience we wanted to speak to. We decided that the way that we wanted to go onto air would be Martin and Reva, basically two of their radio DJs in peak hour, to get involved in our product, to actually indulge themselves, get involved and talk about their experience. Instead of just running a typical ad, get them to talk about what they're doing. And what we've done is we've got a little part of the Multiply program is a pedometer that basically measures your steps, and then on a daily basis you go to this online exercise community and you can download your steps. You can see which of those steps are normal steps and aerobic steps. You can invite buddies and challenge people and create clubs, and they got involved in all of that, and then they started talking about it. So it was just off the cuff, it wasn't scripted, and it was so natural, and I think that's exactly what we wanted to do in terms of radio. Each and every CEO, FD, MD, at the end of the day, they want to know what business did this campaign generate. And in the latest campaign we did with 94.2 Jacaranda, we had 50% success rate on the leads that we actioned after receiving them through the campaign. It's not the cheapest medium, especially if you go with some of the big radio stations, but you've also got to understand the audience that's listening. It's a massive audience that is listening, especially if you choose the right times. And at the same time, you know exactly who that audience is. So dependent on what you want to do, it will eventually tell you if the radio is the right marriage or match for your campaign. The Radio Advertising Bureau is such a good idea, purely for the fact that as much as we get all these highly trained and skilled marketeers popping into the market, it's still new when you sort of get there and you want to sort of get the most from your spend. And understanding marketing is not something that they just, or understanding radio is not something they necessarily teach you. So I think any sort of assistance to help a marketeer to understand that, look, while reaching your objectives, these are the sort of channels that you need to follow, and we will assist you to reach your objectives better by doing the following things, is fantastic. Because it is very much a situation where you're out there, you know what you want to achieve, but you don't necessarily know which are the best ways to do this. And that sort of assistance is great.